Of all the watch brands out there, Rolex and Tudor enjoy an appeal that most brands wish they would enjoy. Both collectors and enthusiasts have spent years cataloging and documenting the tiniest production changes between references. Even Rolex itself has published books on the complete history of its models, from reference numbers and dial variations to seemingly insignificant changes like index variations, handsets, and even text on the dial, resulting in outrageous auction price disparities between two near identical watches from the brand. While it might seem pedantic and borderline hysterical to the average person, like vinyl records and vintage supercars, these vintage watches represent a significant era in the brand's history. Let's dive in. While Rolex as a brand was established as an aspirational premium watch brand, justifying Tudor's existence as more of an everyday man's Rolex sub-brand, the Rolex Sub was always a function-driven watch, a purpose-built dive watch that prioritized water resistance, legibility, and durability to accommodate recreational diving, at a time when this was a relatively new space where professional underwater exploration was getting increasingly popular. The crazy idea that a delicate mechanical watch carefully constructed out of several hundred tiny parts that you can barely see with your naked eye, now being marketed as a do-anything sports watch, added a whole new level of aspiration and desirability into the dive watch format. The 5513 is often considered by Submariner enthusiasts to be the definitive vintage Submariner, the one that established the image of the modern Rolex Sub. Produced for close to 3 decades, it enjoyed one of the longest production runs of any Submariner reference, and for a good reason. It distilled the Submariner into its purest form. No date window to break the dial symmetry, no added text that would add to its busyness, and it was the second Submariner after the 5512 that featured crown guards, creating a clear visual differentiator between the newer, robust professional divers and what we now call the desk divers or dive style watches. Although the 4-line text of superlative chronometer officially certified was already a recognizable signature on the Rolex dials in the 50s, the 5513 did not feature any COSC indication, as neither the caliber 1520 nor the 1530 used in the reference 5513 had any kind of chronometer certification, even though they were identical to the COSC movements. A simple reason to do this was to cut costs, making the 5513 a reliable Rolex but still relatively attainable by those who desired it. The Tudor Submariner tells a different story. Tudor's goal was simple: to deliver Rolex level quality and reliability, but at a much more attainable price. We know this, Rolex targeted the upper end of the watch market, Tudor dealt with the lower segment. A brilliant move from a business perspective, especially considering this formula was set in the mid-1920s. Rolex manufactured the cases, the bracelets, and most of the external parts, while using reliable ETA movements inside to cut costs. And the watch that cemented the brand's reputation was the Tudor Submariner, released just 1 year after the Rolex Sub was introduced. The lower price point made Tudor an attractive proposition not just for everyday civilians, but also for professionals, including the French Navy and several other military organizations. And these partnerships, especially with the French Navy, was crucial to the brand, as they helped shape iconic design characteristics including the Snowflake hand, which was switched from the Rolex Mercedes hands at the request of the Marine Nationale for improved legibility. This added to the appeal of the Tudor brand. Their watches were now proven to be reliable even in the harshest conditions possible. While both Rolex and Tudor have a strong history of being reliable watches used in military expeditions and other dangerous exploration missions, they both have done an excellent job of maintaining their respective brand prestige and positioning without overlapping too much. Rolex was never watered down by offering a more attainable sub-brand. It was worn by senior military officials, with even Ian Fleming placing it on the wrist of James Bond in the original books. At the same time, Tudor isn't a compromise either, especially when looking at it today. Its vast recorded history, especially with watches like the Tudor Sub, still makes these incredibly desirable, even though, like the Rolex, it feels so flimsy by modern standards. It's interesting how so many other watch brands with longer timelines and more artisanal watchmaking heritage often fall short in terms of mainstream recognition. I think it's because Rolex and Tudor have always pulled at the heartstrings when it comes to the most heroic and adventurous traits of human nature. Even today, Rolex continues to work with ambassadors who can be described as the best in their craft. That's why it is still associated with success, and Tudor, while not having the same level of prestige, does enjoy the spillover effect from Rolex, in addition to having its own set of historical milestones that add to its authenticity as a capable, reliable watch brand for the modern collector. Let us know what you think. Visit Swiss Connection Watches for more exceptional watches. Also, do subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see more. Thanks.